But you see how we're talking? That shouldn't even enter into the situation.
Of course not.
Because race, color have absolutely nothing to do with it. It's just that the police, and I wrote this in our podcast in the blurb. I said, the police, many young policemen think that when they get a badge and a gun, they all become James Bond and they have a license to kill.
I don't believe that.
I said many. I didn't say all.
I know we're not all. I would say minority. I don't think it's a minority. Come on, you know how many good arrests there are?
I understand that. Well, don't forget, this is coming from the parent of a cop.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, it's not... Listen, we're talking about the whole country. It's crazy. But listen, our whole system is screwed up. Did you see that special on the jails? Was it 60 Minutes they were talking about jails in different countries?
No.
Okay. In Sweden or some of the other countries, the arrest rate is much lower. We have, we have 700 per 10,000 people, I think, in jail. And in these countries, it's 70 per 10,000. The maximum sentence is 21 years. No more than that. The jails are more like apartments than...
Well, that I know, because I remember they did an article a number of years ago in Chicago because, the Republicans were bringing this up because it was under Obama's watch when he was a community activist and a senator from Chicago, from Illinois, that... They showed you, the dormitories, and it looked like a college dorm. They had recreational facilities and everything. The only thing that would give away that it was a prison was, the fence and the barbed wire.
They had no fence and barbed wires in a lot of these places, and the return back to jail was minimal. Most people went back into society and were able to blend in and become, productive citizens. While in the United States, most criminals go back to jail. And the crimes are the same. It's just that they
Well, that's because in the United States, prison is not looked at as a place to be rehabilitated. The only thing you learn in prison is how to become a better convict. If you're a young person who's getting, I hate to say this, getting started in the business, you learn from all the prisoners with experience, how to perfect your craft. Okay. And it's a sorry state of affairs.
It really is. When you think about it, I was looking at these jails, and the jails, a lot of them, depending, I guess, the severity, a lot of them these guys had one-bedroom apartments practically, and they said when they want to get them set up so when they go back to the normal life, they know how to live it. And some of them are allowed to go to work every day. And then when they're done with the job, they go back to jail, and they voluntarily go back. There's no problems as far as escapes. Right. And as I said, the percentages are very high of people going out and just joining the workforce and never going back to jail. And the arrest rates are very low, and so it's a completely different type of a system. And it seems to work a lot better than the jails here, who, like Mark said, were here to punish, but not to, what's the word?
Rehabilitate.
Well,
and the other problem...
And they do say they're supposed to rehabilitate here, but I don't believe they really
Well,
don't.
You see, the problem here is that when most people think of prison, they want it to be a place where people are punished, okay? in Europe, uh, you know, they understand that the idea is to rehabilitate the prisoner so that he or she will learn how to stay out of trouble when they're outside.
Sure.
Outside meaning outside a prison when they do their time.
Yeah, like I said, the maximum is 21 years. Imagine that.
Well, because also in Europe there is no death penalty.
Yeah.
You know, the most and nobody serves a life sentence. I don't believe there really is such a thing as
21 years.
You know, I mean, 21 years is a long time.
That's for murder.
But if let's say you are in your 30s or 40s, you can still come out in your 50s or 60s and have some sort of a life for yourself. Not but I mean, at least you're not dying in prison.
Even that guy who killed 150 people or something, whatever it was.
I don't know.
There was like a mass murder, one of the worst mass murders ever in Europe. He got 21 years. He got the maximum. And they're trying to rehabilitate him like everybody else.
Well, the problem with serial killers is that, I mean, many of them are, like the Ted Bundys, okay, they can blend in so that you would never know that he's a serial killer. I mean, who figured Ted Bundy? No one figured Ted Bundy to be a serial killer. He was educated. He was bright. He was articulate. Okay? He just had many other problems.
Yeah, he was crazy.
Well,
I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, whatever you want to call him, you're not. If you're a normal human being, you wouldn't be a serial killer.
Of course.
So, I mean,
But
there may be other terms.
Think of it this way. In a normal situation, would somebody like a Walter Scott run away from a cop who has a gun out and is getting ready to shoot him simply because he failed to pay child support? Okay? Or the guy today, if he was running a sting and, the deputy sheriff, whether he was reaching for a taser or a gun, you're going to run away simply because your only crime was that you already have a record.
No, he was selling guns.
Well, but I'm sure at age 44 he had already done some time in prison.
Well, they said he had assaulted an officer before.
But no matter what you do, okay, it doesn't warrant the stupidity of making a decision like that and running away from a cop who has a weapon already drawn.
Well, I don't know if he had it drawn or not, but it doesn't take long to get a weapon drawn.
And if you're running away, you don't have time to look back to see whether he's got his taser or a gun. All you know is eventually something's going to happen to you.
I mean, the guy was yelling, taser, taser, and instead of a taser, it was a bullet. It's, I mean, what can you, it's lack of training. I don't understand how
I don't know. I don't think it is lack of training.
I don't see how a 73-year-old
because
man...
they make a big deal in the academy about learning how to use a taser, and I remember, every so many months, my son has to go into the range and he has to requalify on his weapon. All right, and it's very similar to. Well, you would remember this, infantry training, okay? If you took advanced infantry training in the Army, they set up, back in our day, they set up a makeshift Vietnamese village. And they would show either Viet Cong soldiers with a gun, or they would show women holding babies or old men, or they would show, guerrillas. And you had to know which one to shoot, which one to kill. and you had to qualify. Okay, well, it's something very similar in the academy.
But it's still, it's when I say training, a 73-year-old man. I think he's.
They said he was a former cop.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. The fact that he was a retired cop. He eventually went into insurance, but he maintained his, auxiliary status.
It's not auxiliary. They have a different name for it.
Well, it doesn't make a difference whether it was...
auxiliary don't carry guns.
Now, I understand that. But basically, that's what he did. He was used as a regular cop.
Yeah, not unpaid.
Right.
But he had, all the privileges of a regular policeman, carrying a weapon and all that. But, all right, what I said before is non-trained. I shouldn't say that, but I would say somebody like the cop in South Carolina, I just think he was a bad egg because he showed no remorse. He didn't even bother trying to run after the guy. Just shot him instead because he was probably too lazy to run.
That was the whole bone of contention. The fact that Walter Scott, if that was his name, was not running fast. He could have been overtaken.
Even if he could, why would you shoot him?
No, but he could have been overtaken. There was no reason to draw your weapon and shoot him. The guy, and then he lied. I felt like my life was in jeopardy. How? The guy didn't have a weapon. He didn't have a knife. He didn't have a gun. How was your... And he was running away from you, not running toward you. So it's not like in Ferguson, at least... Officer Wilson said he felt like his life was being threatened because Michael Brown made advances toward the police car and leaned inside the window.
Listen, Michael Brown, in Ferguson, the officer was acquitted because he didn't do anything wrong. That's the end of it.
Well, he followed procedure, and they said there was lack of... evidence to show that he acted irrationally. He followed the right procedure. It was a terrible tragedy, blah, blah, blah.
Also, the federal government followed with their own investigation. They didn't find anything that he did was wrong. And Holder was trying to get something on these guys. But he couldn't because...
No, Holder was not trying to get something on him. Holder just wanted to get to the bottom of the story because as the nation's chief law enforcement officer, that's his job. If he is being called in, okay, he's not making it a personal vendetta.
He should have never been called in.
Well, he was called in. He certainly didn't enter on his own. All right, he had to be asked in, and what happened is he was asked in by community activists and state police and
I don't think the police asked for it to come in.
The Black Association for Police Officers. Okay, this is why Holder,
Holder promised that he was going to investigate it. Come on, he said he's going to investigate and he's going to see what he can find out and do what he can to get this.
Now, he didn't promise. He said there will be an investigation. Okay? You make it sound like he went in with an ulterior motive, and he didn't. So you're no better than Reverend Al Sharpton stirring up trouble with his rhetoric.
I think Holder had an ulterior motive.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, but I don't really trust him the way he should have never said that he's going to do something and investigate it. That was not his position at the time. This was a local matter, and he shouldn't have gone in. He should not have gone.
As a representative of the government, he was already asked to come in and investigate, and that's all he did.
Who called him in? The president?
No, the president had nothing to do with it.
Whatever, Mark. I don't believe it.
Well, you could believe whatever you want,
exactly.
and you do anyway.
and you believe what you want.